Hello everyone, my name is Shenyuan Hu. I'm the founder of Joint Commonwealth Fund, or JCF. Today I'd like to welcome you to this our second live webinar for JCF. So JCF is basically a crypto index fund that aims to make basic income universal. All right, so today what we like to do is to talk a little bit about universal basic income, or UBI, and why this might be something that's worth your attention. So the idea of a universal basic income has been there for quite some time actually. In the 19th century, there are philosophers, like Thomas Paine, and also like the author of basically this guy who went to the woods. They all talk about the concept of providing basic living substance to everyone. And even in the 20th centuries, people like Martin Luther King Jr. have advocated for what's called, a minimum wage, or something like a minimum guarantee income. And the concept is the same. By providing everyone with some basic support for their living, they are then able to choose more freely in terms of their work, their lifestyle, and other things that are meaningful and important for them as human beings. But this idea of UBI actually has become more and more prevalent in recent years. So one of the questions is, why are there more countries that are interested and experimented with basic income? Well, part of the reason is that probably many of you are aware that the automation, which actually started from the 18th, 19th century, of using machines to replace or reduce manpower, the trend has been going on, since, for already 200 years. But in recent years, the advancement of AI, artificial intelligence, and also robotics, they are actually replacing even a more bigger chunk of human labor, okay? And to the point that, like the founder of Tesla, Elon Musk, he's even suggested that he believes that in the very near future, there are very little things that machines or robots will not, that they are not able to do. Okay, they can either do it equally or even better than people can. Okay, that's something that's already happening. But what happens is, if your job is being automated, let's say if you're a driver and automated driving has replaced you, then what do? If you want to find another job, then that means you have to get yourself the necessary relevant training and education that you can pick up a new skill set and make yourself productive and useful, right? That actually has become harder and harder. So with automation and with the difficulty of job adjustments, actually the gap, between the rich and the poor is widening. And this has happened in the past 20, 30 years already, actually. The middle class actually across the world are shrinking, especially in developed countries. And so for example, like one of the things is there's this presidential candidate, Andrew Yang. He has already indicated that he will be running for US president for year 2020, okay, as a Democratic representing the Democratic Party. So Andrew, he himself actually is an entrepreneur, and he has been, trying to create jobs through what's called Venture for America in different major U.S. cities that has seen people's job being lost. So he tried to help entrepreneurs to start companies, create jobs. But what he found was, what he found is even though he's been working hard to create new jobs and relatively speaking quite successful at it, but the number of jobs that's being created, it's much less than the job being displaced by automation. Okay. And even one of the things, by nature, a lot of these new companies, startups, entrepreneurs, what they're doing, like the jobs that they're creating actually is to do more automation because they're probably find some solutions to have a more efficient way of doing things, So actually, the rise of these new companies actually will mean more efficiency and less human labor. A lot of these new companies probably only employ a few people who can, produce a lot more than previously. So that's the reason why he decided he needed to do something else, okay, other than trying to help entrepreneurs, because the jobs that's being created basically cannot meet the demand of the jobs being lost or replaced. Okay, so more countries and people are taking note of UBI. But what is the effect of these experiments? So there's quite a few countries that have experimented with various forms of UBI. For example, like US, Canada, they have experimented what's called negative income tax in the 60s, 70s. That means if your income is below a certain threshold, the government actually subsidizes money back to you, okay, so that your income is up to a certain level. And then there's the most recent example. Oh, and in the US, there's also what's called the Alaska Fund. Okay, that is probably one of the more long-running systems. That it's not really claimed as a basic income system, but it's very much in terms of the mechanism like it. So Alaska has quite an oil reserve, right, as its natural resource. So this fund was established essentially to pay all the residents in Alaska, some money off the profits of the oil fund, and this has supported families more or less. I mean, although it's not to a basic income level, but it does help a bit with the household spending. And the most recent and the longest standing experiment happened in Kenya. So in Kenya, I mean, what this organization Give Directly, it's called Giving Directly. What they have done is they have provided households with certain amount of money for some basic living. And the study was originally intended to observe, what's the effect of this kind of support to will people actually become better, or actually they will become worse? Because one of the arguments against basic income is that if you are getting paid without having to do any work, then you just simply don't work, right? And you could become a lazy bag. But what happens in reality is that these households that have received the support, their average household income actually has risen. Okay, what this means is that people actually, because they have this support, and they probably don't need to just force themselves to work on low-level works that pays a wage. They could invest in themselves in terms of upping their skills, maybe get some education and training, or to explore new opportunities, such as maybe starting small business, so that they actually, they have improved their economic well-being by getting this support. And some families use this chance to have basic support to care for their children and elders. Okay, so in a sense, adding social stability to otherwise, if you have to work, then your kids, your elders at home will be left unattended, right? So overall, these pilot studies so far has shown a positive direct impact of having a basic income system versus not having one. Now, another aspect, maybe we can look at the rise of the attention to basic income. Besides the, the threat of massive job loss, we can also look at what's happening to the global economic. Okay, so I think, and this is probably also relevant in terms of us understanding what is really happening and what should people do in general, because globalization, I mean, the phrase or the phenomenon of globalization actually has been talked about and happening all over the world. Like we see McDonald's, Starbucks everywhere. It's in all the major cities, and people have a more and more universal culture or popular culture to share and to discuss about. But behind the scene, what's also happening is that economic assets in the 20th century used to be capital in terms of money. Okay, if you own money, then you have the power because you could then invest in building factories and manufacture things, or hire people and create wealth. But that kind of capital has shifted to what's called the knowledge capital or knowledge-based economy, because like the most direct examples that people are familiar with is you can simply look at Facebook and Google. These companies actually are not started by people heavy with capital, but actually by people with intelligence, with computer skills, with programming skills, that are just a couple of people originally, but because they are tackling a large enough demand, and also their operation can scale copy quickly by the internet and software technology. So in the past 10 years, actually the most valuable companies that has rise up in their stock price are not the traditional manufacturers, or service providers, are rather the Google, Facebook, Amazon, companies like these. Okay, so we do see a shift of the important assets from being a monetary financial assets to knowledge-based assets. But regardless, this is still something that could create a winner-take-all effect, meaning that, and in some ways, it actually has become worse, because I mean, you can observe this same phenomena in many industries, such as movies or games. Okay, it's usually the top players that are, and because it's easy to scale these things, so once the winner comes up and becomes the top, it's basically a winner take all market, and it leaves very little to be earned by the medium or the smaller players. So and this is of course all based on supply and demand. That these economic mechanisms that simply, if something that's in great demand, but you can do that very cheaply, then its impact will be enormous. So what happens is this change in the I guess the knowledge economy, it actually both it fastens the pace and the scale of globalization, but also it's creating an even wider gap of wealth inequality, okay, as we're speaking. And so part of and a lot of the things now actually work at a much more efficient scale level if you are tapping onto the global market. So I'll give you one example of, what we have learned and observed at JCF. One of the things is, during the promotion and marketing of JCF, we needed to produce a video. And to produce this video, we actually go up to a freelancer website to got ourselves a partner who's from Philippines, willing to do marketing for us. And he produced this video clip actually in less than a week by, just getting, because he knows this excellent filmmaker who's still actually a student. So we basically produced this clip that has been watched now close to 3,000 times now. Okay, without advertisement promotion. So let me just play this.
For the next 10 years, we are about to see more machines and less sweat work, more automations, new technologies, more people and less jobs available, less opportunities, growing income inequality and poverty. We can all act today to give our families more options and more ways to earn money wisely and passively. What if each of us can pull a small amount of money and put it in an index fund and never is the growth of the world's top 10 cryptocurrency? A joint Commonwealth fund, every investor earns yearly, consistently by a dividend payment. Secure your family's future and earn your own universal basic income, even without the help of governments or middlemen. At JCF, we are finding better ways to distribute UBI. Talk to us and we'll show you how we get it done. Visit us at https://jcf.world/.
All right. So this clip actually was produced, we just asked our freelance copywriter to produce the text, I think on Saturday actually. And the text arrived on Monday, and the theme was decided. The filming took a couple of days, and the first draft of this clip was done by Wednesday. Okay, so it was actually less than a week, just a few days. And you see a very high quality, professionally made film. And the total budget of this actually was $150, okay, to produce the whole thing. So that is pretty impressive, because if we were to do this in Taiwan, first of all, I don't think we can do it that quickly. And the second is to produce a video of that quality. It probably will cost at least 2 to 3 times and even more to achieve that kind of level quality of film, short clip. So what this actually, it was actually a shock to us as well, that we weren't expecting something of this high quality could be produced within that short amount of time. But this is all done and possible thanks to the global, economy, the globalization, the freelancer work environments that's happening all over the world. And what this means is that, basically people with ideas or knowledge capital will be able to produce wealth at a much faster and better pace than everybody else, okay? And again, whoever can control and manage this kind of scale and knowledge will have a massive advantage over those who cannot. And this is something that actually will create an even wider wealth or opportunity gap. So our last question is, do I need basic income myself? Now this is a question because the answer could be different for if you are people from different backgrounds. I would say if you're already quite well up and established and close to the age of retirement, then you have accumulated a lot of assets. Probably you don't need protections like this, okay? Because you're already protected by the assets you've accumulated. But for most everybody else, for people who are, still maybe in the middle of their career or who are beginning to have a career, then the question is very different. Because actually, even if you can get a job now, it's very hard to say if you will still keep to that job, 5, 10 years from now? Most likely not. Okay, because probably something, some disruption might happen, and or you could have a different aspiration to pursue. But in any case, what happens is the uncertainty of the world, the society, the economic trends ahead is really hard to tell. And one of the things, the effect of this is that even if you are a skillful person and you do have some traditional connections in terms of your basic knowledge and I guess even if you have some assets, the uncertainty of the economic environment. For example, we all know there's an economic crisis in 2008. Something similar to that, a lot of experts are predicting an economic collapse similar or even bigger than what happened in 2008 is likely will happen. It's only a matter of when, because the underlying financial infrastructures and systems have not changed, during all these years. It was because of that governments were willing to back up to raise up debts, so the banks were safe during that time. But the next time when something like that happens, it's really difficult to say if something can still be solved. So even if you have assets, through insurance companies or banks, it's still something that if an economic collapse happens, may not protect you well. Okay, so essentially the idea is if there is a system of sorts that could continuously provide you with passive income up to a certain point, then this will be important as we face off various kind of job and future insecurities. So for people who are still just starting, I would say having such a basic income actually will also help you to be able to explore and learn the skills and the world about how you can face these challenges. Because if you are tied to having to work to provide yourself a living, then likely you wouldn't have the time or the space to actually to explore and learn this, this very diverse and highly dynamic and uncertainty world ahead of us. But if you're able to do this learning, then you're probably better off in the face of uncertainties. So our opinion is that for the young people, it's definitely something to think about. All right, so that's it for today's webinar, livecast. And I thank you all for attending. If you have any interests, please follow us at jcf.world, our official site, to see more. And also, if you have any questions or feedback, please feel free to let us know. You can do it either on Facebook or through, send us emails and can let us know if there are other topics that you are interested to learn more about. Okay, so thanks a lot, and I'll see you next week.